Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello student, today I am going to discuss the topic entitled Environment and Literature, and as you know, this is the part of studying English novel and interdisciplinary approach. Well, when we talk of environment, this has become integral part of literary studies. These days, environment is one of the important issues while talking of interdisciplinary researches. So, literary studies has become one of the most active areas of the environmental humanities. And this course will introduce you to some of the main concern of that increasing important field. And this talk of mine will also consider the ways that literature helps us to think about human relationship to environments, nature, places, animals, weather, events, and the planet. Well, keeping all these aspects in mind, you can understand that how important it is to explore the various unfold layers of environmental humanities. This course tends to develop a historical perspective on how literary and philosophical tradition such as Romanticism, Transcendentalism, Naturalism, and postmodernism mediate different understandings of the environment. This course will also highlight the contemporary environmental questions and problems, exploring the role of literature in our present ecological crisis, especially regarding climate change and environmental justice. The environment is the collection of the socio-economic. Because when we talk of environmental studies or environmental humanities, we need to understand what do we mean by environment or ecology. So, it is a collection of the socio-economic, biological, or chemical factors that make up the surroundings of a human. Because the term ecology is also very, very important. It comprises both living and non-living beings that exist in agreement with one another. In representing our environment, literature plays a critical role and is the reflection of modern day society. Eco-criticism is a term for the association among literature and the environment. As I said that this is the part of the course, reading English novels and interdisciplinary approach. So when we talk of interdisciplinarity, well, we need to know about environment, culture, geography, architect, and environment is the word that comprises almost everything that is there on the earth or related to human being. Since prehistory, literature and the arts have been drawn to portrayals of physical environments and human environment interactions. The modern environmentalist movement, as it emerged first in the late 19th century and in its more recent incarnation in the 1960s, yes, gave rise to a rich array of fictional and non-fictional writings concerned with humans' changing relationship to the natural world. Only since the early 1990s, however, has the long-standing interest of literary or literature studies in these matters generated the initiative most commonly known as eco-criticism, an eclectic and loosely coordinated movement whose contribution thus far have been most visible within its home discipline of literature, but whose interest and alliances extend across various art forms and media. Literature and environment studies, commonly called eco-criticism, as I said earlier also, or environmental criticism in analogy to the more general term literary criticism, comprise an eclectic, pluriform, and cross-disciplinary tentative that aims to explore the environmental dimension of literature that we have to keep in mind, and researches are going on like eco-criticism, ecology, ecofeminism, so we need to know all such terms. Well, what are the factors? The imagination of place and place attachment, the enlistment and critique of models of scientific inquiry in the study of literature and the art, the examination of the significance of gender difference and environmental representation, the cross pollination of eco critical and post colonial scholarship as eco criticism has extended its horizon beyond its original focus on Anglo American imagination. Eco-criticism's evolving interest in indigenous art and thought, and eco-criticism no less keen, complex attentiveness to artistic representation and the ethics of relations between humans and animals. Well, first wave of a scholarship of the 1990s tended to equate environment with nature, to focus on literary renditions of the natural world in poetry, fiction, and non-fiction as means of evoking and promoting contact with it, to value nature preservation and human attachment, to place at local, communitarian, or bioregional level, and to affirm an ecocentric or biocentric ethics often intensified by some conception of innate bond, whether biological, psychological, or spiritual, conjoining the individual human being and the natural world. That is why I said that the horizon, the corpus of environmental study is very, very vast. The phenomenological philosophy of Andre Naes, inventor of deep ecology, Bertrand Merleau-Ponty, and at first especially Heidegger, influenced some of the strongest eco-critical work in this area. By contrast, second wave scholarship of the past decade has shown greater interest in literature pertaining to the metropolis and industrialization. Eco-criticism has tended to reject the validity of the nature cultural distinction, sometimes to the point of following, Bruno Latour's stigmatization of nature as hopelessly vague and antiquated, and has favored a sociocentric rather than biocentric and or individual experience oriented ethics and aesthetics, placing particular emphasis on environmental justice concern. Because we need to know the various critics, their interpretation of this kind of studies, their perception and also perspectives on such researches. Related developments include the reconception of place attachment from local focus to transnational and or global, and the cross pollination of literature environment studies, both with post-colonial literary studies and with studies of ethnic minority literatures, in addition to Native American, which has been of a strong interest from the start. Well, these later developments are by no means the only initiatives that have taken literature environment studies far beyond its original base in modern Anglophone writing. Well, today's literature environment scholarship considers all area of Western history and is increasingly influenced by criticism on and or from the non-Anglophone world, particularly Hispanic, German, Chinese, and Japanese. Eco-criticism is the interdisciplinary study of the connections between literature and the environment, and this is the outcome of the discussion given by various pioneers, peers, and the critics. It draws on contributions from natural scientists, writer, literary critics, anthropologists, and historians in examining the differences between nature and its cultural construction. Eco-criticism emerged in the 1960s with the start of the environmental movement and the publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Springs in 1962, but really began to take off in the 1980s. So far, there have been two waves of eco-criticism, the first in the 1980s and the second in the 1990s. Different types of eco-criticism include pastoral, wilderness, and ecofeminism. Pastoral, found primarily in British and American literature, focuses on the dichotomy between urban and rural life, often idealizing nature and rural life and demonizing urban life. There are three branches of pastoral eco-criticism, and those are classical, romantic, and American. Classical is characterized by nostalgia and nature as a place for human relaxation and reflection. Romantic is characterized by portraying rural independence as desirable. American emphasizes agrarianism and represents land as a resource to be cultivated. So, ecofeminism or ecological feminism is a movement and framework that highlights the relationship between woman and nature. So we have seen, the diversification of eco-criticism, and ecofeminism is one of the most important areas for research these days. So women and nature, including the inextricable link between the operation of women and the climate crisis. It uncovers the ways in which women play a crucial role in caring for nature and our communities through their labor and knowledge, while being barred equitable access to social, political, and economic rights and benefits. By illuminating the ways in which gender based oppression and the climate crisis are interconnected, ecofeminism strikes at the root causes of both the extraction, exploitation, and devaluing of nature and those considering other. As climate justice and queer feminist activist Mazendra Roderick Acher puts it, they are, underquote, those whose bodies, lives, and dignity are taken as a means to the end of accumulation. Indigenous groups who have been colonized, workers on the lower rungs, black and brown, minorities, and women who are at the crossroads of multiple kinds of operation, unquote. And this quotation is really very important to understand, explore ecofeminism. So, ecofeminism is an ideology, a philosophy, and a movement that sees climate change, gender equality, and social injustice more broadly and intrinsically related issues, all tied to masculine dominance in society. Specifically, ecofeminism holds the most environmental issues can be traced back to the global prioritization of qualities deemed masculine, particularly the one some world regard as toxic, like aggression and domination, and those in power who embody those attributes. Well, feminism in all its waves has experienced evolutions and resurgences since it formally began in the mid 1800. As climate change awareness and subsequent activism rose in recent decades, feminists began to identify the way in which the movement for gender equality and the movement for environmental protection are related. The term ecofeminism was coined by the French feminist Francois de Yonom in 1974. According to her, disfranchisement and oppression of women, people of color, and the poor are intrinsically linked to the degradation of the natural world, as both arose as a result of patriarchal dominance. Over the years, many more have explored the sentiment behind ecofeminism and began advocating for it. Women such as Vandana Shiva, founder of the Research Foundation for Science, Technology and Ecology, and Caroline Merchant, author of Death of Nature, Women, Ecology, and Scientific Revolution are just two prominent names within this movement since its inception. Some other names of note include Val Blumut, Greta Gard, and Susan Griffin, just to name a few. Four main eco-feminist principles, both the operation of marginalized groups and the operation of nature are connected by cause. Patriarchal dominance, which presupposes masculine attributes are more valuable, has led to the degradation of nature, land, and animals, along with the marginalization of groups, including but not limited to women, children, and people of color. Capitalism further propels this operation as it places value on productivity by any means and subsequently does not value many attributes considered feminine, including nature itself. We must replace our culture of domination with an ethic of care. Caroline Merchant basically says ecofeminism is calling for an ethic of care and an ethic where decisions are made equitably. Well, professor and ecofeminist scholar Heidi Hunter explains to this particular concept when we poison the earth, we are poisoned, and it all comes from this history of patriarchal domination where whoever holds the most power has this right to dominate, control, and exploit everyone else. All forms of operation are unacceptable and interconnected. Under ecofeminism, all forms of operation are not acceptable. For environmentalism to be all encompassing, it has to consider all people, women, people of color, and LGBTQ community all face particular issues, and when these issues overlap, their effects become compounded. Understanding these connections are necessary for equitable change. So, in order to make real positive impact in both the cases of environmental degradation and the operation of marginalized groups, ecofeminism says we have to understand their links to patriarchal society. Feminism must consider ecological concern and vice versa. It is really critical that we understand the gender dynamics around climate impacts because we need to have strategies and approaches through adaptation and resilience that respond to those inequities. The people most affected by environmental destruction must be the ones to lead the movement. As ecofeminists push for an inclusive care ethic, there is also an emphasis on the importance of having diverse leadership at the forefront of the movement. In particular, the people who are affected by environmental destruction, women, particularly indigenous women and other women of color, are the ones who are the best equipped to address it and identify the right solutions. Cultural ecofeminism has been criticized by social ecofeminists for making essentialist, universalist, and ahistorical claims about both woman and nature. Social ecofeminists claim that there is no essential biological, natural, innate nature of women, no homogeneous woman's experience or women's ways of knowing, and no historical concept of woman. Rather, women's identity are socially constructed, historically fashioned, and materially reinforced through the interplay of a diversity of race, ethnicity, class, sexual orientation, age, ability, marital status, and geographic factors. Analysis of the intersectionality of race and gender operation have been applied in the arena of environmental activism. Ecofeminism has developed as an international movement that includes academic feminists and activist environmentalists globally. This encompasses a variety of approaches to thinking about and acting on behalf of the environment, and all ecofeminists recognize the necessary linkage between a healthy ecology and healthy lives. Well, these are certain important books for going through it about ecofeminism, and I'm sure after going through these books, you will learn a lot. So, the web of ecofeminism is further extended to environmental racism. The strategy of looking for connections between operations is also evident in ecofeminism discussion of environmental racism. Two-thirds of all Black and Latinos in the United States actually reside in areas with one or more unregulated toxic waste site, and race is the most significant factor which differentiates between communities with such sites and communities without them. Ecological feminist analysis is helpful in raising questions such as how ethical, economic, and aesthetic discourses justify racist, toxic politics, how disempowerment and alienation make it particularly difficult for communities to fight back, how racist conceptions of people and cities as unclean and hopeless justify mistreatment, and how is male dominated context women may be disproportionately affected by toxins. Further, ecological feminism reminds us that toxic dumping is not only a problem concerning human well being, but it hugely affects non humans as well. This particular aspect of ecofeminism is extremely vocal against industrial development or rapid scientific development, which makes adverse impact both nature and women at large. There is no question of doubt that development goes against natural diversity. It distorts and disturbs the natural balance in manifold of ways. The negative impact equally degrades women. In rural village, women at large maintain household matters. Ecological feminists clearly demonstrated how first world development of third world countries imports problematic and troublesome patriarchal ideas, causing innumerable social problems for women in the countries that are being developed. In this regard, we can mention the name of Bandhana Shiva, who keeps on telling stories, her own point of view on this particular issue quite vividly. Ecofeminism would certainly stand against mainstream approaches. Mainstream approaches to environmental philosophy can be divided into two basic categories: those that argue for environmental protection based on the instrumental value of the environment, and those that seek to extend intrinsic moral value to at least some non human entities. This third wave of ecofeminism encourages thinking that is contextualist, pluralist, inclusive, and holistic. It is contextualist in the sense that it seeks to avoid abstract and universal ethical pronouncement. This process of abstraction can prevent us from recognizing the rich diversity within both human and non human nature. It has simply taken characteristics of the dominant group and turn them into ethical and philosophical ideals. It can thus reinforce the operation of women, animals, and the rest of the natural world. It is believed that both social ecology and ecofeminism are more specific about the roots of environmental and ecological devastation. In fact, the domination of the natural world is part of more general patterns of domination and control. Therefore, until all patterns of domination are eliminated, we can expect little real progress to be made on the environmental front. Having said this, ecofeminism actually faces serious challenges. How exactly are we to understand the connections between human domination of other humans and the human domination of non human nature? Has one really caused the other? Are they mutually reinforcing? Shouldn't have ethical priority? Are they simply parallel developments with little direct connection? What are the ethical and philosophically preferable strategy of resisting these forms of domination? What exactly are the connection between the domination of women and other forms of social domination? Is ecofeminism a branch of social ecology? Well, with these questions, I stop here because this is the kind of a study which needs to go on and on with a proper critical thinking of the inequality between the nature and human being. Therefore, we need to discuss at large ecology whenever we talk of environmental study. Thank you very much. Let us meet in the next lecture.